Walters.
And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Armed American Radio's Monster Cast is going to be a powerhouse today. Welcome inside the Car Firearms Group studios. I am Mark Walters in front of the CZ powerful microphone, busting out on hundreds of radio stations around the nation today, and right here on YouTube, right here on Rumble, and right here on X. If you're just joining us for the first time, welcome in. Make sure to like, subscribe. You're going to get all the news that's fit to talk about today. I can promise you the focus will be the Third Circuit in New Jersey and what it means. Greg, we're going to jump right in. Our first guest is John Comerford. If you would be kind enough to tell people where to watch and participate in the chat. And please get in the comments, guys. We're reading them on air during the breaks, and we'll respond to some of them if we can. And then we're going to get started with John right away. Let's go for it.
Yeah, sure. If you're looking for us over on YouTube and Rumble, just search for Armed American Radio with Mark Walters. Over on X, you can find us at AAR Mark. You can always head on over to armedamericanradio.org or .com, hit that menu icon, then select your watch live or listen live option. And to join our live chat, all you have to do is download Telegram, create your profile, and search for Armed American Radio Conversations.
Guys, today we're going to take a deep dive into what could become one of the most consequential federal appellate decisions for the Second Amendment in a post-Bruin environment. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit has struck down New Jersey's ban on an entire class of semi-automatic rifles and overturned the state's 10-round magazine restriction as well. They concluded both violate the Second Amendment, but you and I already knew that. This is huge. In doing so, the court expanded the district court's ruling beyond the Colt AR-15, which was the rifle that was the focus of the case, to the broader class of semi-automatic rifles, also holding that the magazines are themselves protected arms, and grounded its analysis, the court did, in the Supreme Court's decisions, not just in Heller and Bruin, but Rahimi, Hamani, and Wolford as well. The court also noted that the SCOTUS has already granted review in Viramontes v. Cook and Grant v. Higgins, making this opinion an important part of the legal landscape heading into the next term. Joining me right now, John Comerford, NRA, ILA Director. John, every time you come on, we have got fantastic news. Let's take another victory lap. The NRA's been fighting this in New Jersey for years. Welcome in, my friend. Let's do it.
Thanks for having me. It's been an exciting time for the Second Amendment in the courts, that's for sure.
Have you seen anything like this before?
Well, look, certainly not in New Jersey. As someone who grew up in New Jersey, I take this one very personally. It's very sometimes it's a sweet victory, but we're already looking towards the next steps. But we'll take the win when we can, particularly when the opinion was drafted by a Biden-appointed judge.
Can you believe it? And it was an en banc panel, ladies and gentlemen. It was a 10-5 decision. And John is absolutely correct. The writer of the opinion was a Biden appointee. Now, I've been through every word of this opinion more than once, and I keep finding different things in it, John. But what is remarkable to me is, in fact, it was a Biden appointee, and this was a strong decision. I've phrased this as a roadmap for SCOTUS going forward. Did it appear that way to you too?
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking with Joe Greenlee, who runs our litigation team, and does a great job. And he pointed something out, which was, even though the entire document's, I think, 192 pages when you have all the dissents and the concurrences together, but the opinion itself, as he said, there's something striking about just how simple and straightforward it is. As he put, compared to the gymnastics involved in the opinions of upholding such bans like we saw in the Seventh Circuit. So it was encouraging to see. And look, we were optimistic there, because for the listeners, going back a little bit, if you recall, these cases were heard in the three-judge panel, and then the circuit decided to take the cases en banc themselves, which is exceptionally rare. And a testament to elections have consequences. We gained an additional conservative judge appointed by President Trump, I believe the day before the en banc panel. So that shows John Thune really, congratulations to him and kudos to him, because he pushed through those block nominee panels to get this judge on the court. And that's what makes things like this happen. So that's only possible because of a pro-gun Senate and certainly President Trump nominating the right judges and the Senate confirming them.
Well, John, obviously Trump plays a major role here because he's flipped the Third Circuit. This gives us the split that we've been looking for a lot of years. But does it really matter now, since the court has already granted cert in Viramontes and Higgins? Does it matter?
Well, I think it does matter here in particular because Viramontes doesn't have the magazine component. Right. And as we know, the Supreme Court loves to slice bread as thin as possible. But, I mean, going back in time, and I think it's important for the listeners to know the history of how this came together, because sometimes when cases are combined, that can be a little complex. So NRA, along with our partners in our state association Association of New Jersey Rifle and Pistol Clubs, filed the original case, which was a magazine case when New Jersey took their ban from 15 to 10, all the way back in 2018.
Yeah.
It wasn't until after the NRA's win in the Bruin case in 2022, our friends at FPC filed the Cheeseman case, and the same week we filed an additional hardware challenge as well. So, kudos to ANJRPC and Blake Ellman. I got to give him a shout out, our plaintiff. He's a really good guy, a shooter and true believer. I think he lit off some extra fireworks left over from 4th of July after this win this weekend. But this goes back to 2018.
Yes, it does.
And, with them combined and with our attorneys, Aaron Murphy from Clement Murphy at oral argument, and also on the Cheeseman side with Pete from the Cooper and Kirk team. I mean, it's a dynamic duo, and it led to a victory.
Yeah, it led to a huge victory. So let's break this down for people. This is a Third Circuit decision. Third Circuit, of course, encompasses Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, and believe it or not, if I'm not mistaken, the U.S. Virgin Islands as well, which is about as anti-gun as you can get. I think they like to operate on a spirit of aloha like Hawaii does. But having said that, guys in the Third Circuit, John, let's just put this in context. Are gun bans over in New Jersey, effective right now? Can we buy what we want to buy in New Jersey right now as a result of this decision?
Not yet. So I'm glad you asked that question because I wanted to cover next steps. If you dive into the comments, and tread lightly, it can be shark-infested waters at times. Yeah. But folks seem happy here, rightfully so. But a lot of questions, right? What happens next? Can I buy mags? Can I go buy the AR-15 I've been looking at in its original format, not in some bastardized New Jersey compliant conception? So here's where we're at. The opinion's obviously been issued, but we have to wait for the Third Circuit to issue its mandate requiring the district court to implement the actual judgment. So then the state, they can request a stay, and they can request that mandating pending their cert petition, which I'm sure they will do. I think there's a good chance that could be denied. If the Third Circuit denies it, the state can ask the Supreme Court to stay the case as well. So once that mandate's issued, the district court will actually enter an order prohibiting enforcement of semi-automatic rifle and magazine bans in the Third Circuit. At that point, it would be unenforceable and people could go ahead and buy and sell those items. However, that would, first we have to get through, I like to look at it this way. New Jersey doesn't respect law-abiding gun owners' right to due process at all.
Of course.
Right? Whether it's red flag laws or anything else. However, the American justice system still has due process, and the state has their right to due process to appeal to the Supreme Court and ask for the stay. So keep an eye out for that. It's still got to go back to the district court. They're going to ask for a stay. So just folks need to be patient, stay tuned. The courts can be frustratingly slow.
Oh, don't we know that?
But we are moving in the right direction, and that's the key.
John, I'm going to phrase it this way because I want people in the Third Circuit to understand this, particularly our dear friends in New Jersey who have been fighting this for so many years, the tyranny in that commie-infested, cockroach, Democrat-ridden state. Guys, the cavalry is on the way, okay? You can hear the hooves. They're on the way. Hang tight. It's coming. Now, from what I understand, John, we're getting ready to take a break, but Supreme Court first oral argument the next term is going to be the two gun ban cases. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a fascinating, historic time coming up for the Second Amendment. We've got one more segment with John Comerford, Director, NRA, Executive Director, NRA, ILA. John will return with us for one more segment, some more questions for him, followed by attorney, constitutional attorney and 2A scholar Mark Smith. Powerhouse Hour, followed by another Powerhouse Hour, followed by yet again another Powerhouse Hour. We'll be right back right after the break.
We'll be providing supplemental briefing to SCOTUS to recognize what just happened in our case in the Third Circuit. So they'll conference on that in September. And, you know, as much as it seemed like the court was trying to set that aside or procrastinate on dealing with Duncan as many times it was held over for conference, it's going to be even harder for the court to ignore just MAGs. And Viramontes doesn't cover MAGs, so it's really critical the NRA time that case to be there at SCOTUS. So, I mean, I can't say it enough. It's such an exciting time for Second Amendment litigation, and this long-term strategy is working out, built on the foundation of NRA's win in Bruin.
Yeah, you know, ladies and gentlemen, the frustration, John, you and I have felt this. We've talked about it both on air and off air before, privately and on air. The frustration that it's taken in a post-Bruin environment, because we want all of this now. It's beginning to become very clear now, in hindsight, which is always high definition in the rearview mirror, how this has been built. Is it as clear to you as it is to me? I'm beginning to see the thumbnails come together here.
Look, there's a whole lot of people a lot smarter than me in the Second Amendment litigation space that had a long-term strategy on this. We've had a lot of fighters in the trench, whether that's NRA's legal team or outside counsel, or the same for other Second Amendment groups. And Bruin really laid the foundation for what's possible. And, you know, I want to point out, look, all these cases were combined here and in the Seventh Circuit, and look at the sheer volume of litigation that is being filed. You know, we have our friends at SAF, we have our friends at FPC and others, and we get asked all the time, you know, is NRA up for this case, this one, that one? Well, look, we have a lot of generous members out there. We have great support from the Civil Rights Defense Fund, the NRA Freedom Action Foundation, and, of course, our friends at Midway, who set up the endowment for the National Endowment for the Protection of the Second Amendment that benefits NRA's litigation efforts on civil rights litigation. So that allows NRA to be ready in the courts. I mean, we're in almost 70 cases right now, 70 nationwide at the state and federal level. And that's only going to accelerate because of what was made possible in Bruin. And you're just starting to see the fruits of that labor. I mean, you know, go ahead and plant an apple tree in your backyard. It takes a little while before you're going to get a good harvest. And we're in harvest season now, and we're harvesting wins, and those wins are being fueled by the liberal anti-gun tears that are out there. There's only more to come.
So how does this, you know, when I was talking with Attorney General Todd Blanche at NRA convention, he made it clear, a question I asked him, you know, what happens if we lose the midterms? What happens if and when eventually there's another Democrat administration? And he said, everything we're doing right now is designed to lock down our Second Amendment rights going forward. It's something that you and I haven't even mentioned here yet, and we really should give a shout out. Harmeet Dillon, DOJ, civil rights, going after Virginia, going after California, putting states on notice, suing Denver, suing the state of Colorado. I mean, this is a multi-pronged attack on our rights, unlike anything we've ever seen before. So do you feel comfortable after a post-Trump environment? If you know, we don't know what's going to happen in the midterms. There's a lot of speculation going on there, and then we don't know what happens in 2028. They're also playing the long game, right?
Well, two things. Both involve the U.S. Senate. First, if you're listening, call your U.S. Senator and tell him to confirm Todd Blanche as Attorney General. I mean, he's doing a fantastic job. I mean, what other acting Attorney General is going to spend the time that he did at the NRA convention, working media row, going booth to booth, going to events? I mean, he's a true believer. And again, I said this line when I introduced him at one of the dinners, which was, if you have reservations about Todd Blanche, you know, don't let the domestic pressure wane out, because his mother-in-law owns Checkmate Industries, and keeping your mother-in-law happy is very important. And she likes a pro-gun attorney general. So he's there, and he's proven it time and time again. But the other part that involves the U.S. Senate is confirming these pro-gun judges, and we have to make sure voters and gun owners as a bloc turn out this fall. Whether you're motivated, whether you're not, whether you're on your couch, I don't care. Get your butt up, get to the polls, Vote early if you want to. You know, if you vote early, your ads will stop. So try that for the first time this year, and your reward is you won't get the texts and the digital ads. But get out there, vote for your pro-gun U.S. senator, because that's how we protect the confirmation process. And two more, just think of what has been done so far. That's 6 years of President Trump. At 8 years, we really moved towards reshaping the American judiciary in the interest of constitutional freedom, and we deliver more victories just like we saw in the Third Circuit and like we're going to see in Viramontes at the U.S. Supreme Court next year. So it all starts with casting a vote at the ballot box, and you can't cast a vote if you're not registered. So first register, drag your friends, get them registered, and then show up to the polls.
Yeah, one of the problems we've had on our side here over the years is when we start stacking up wins, which we haven't had historically like we have now, but there's this fear of complacency, right? We're winning. The firearms industry is seeing it right now. We get complacent. We tend not to vote. Guys, when your foot's on the gas right now, ladies and gentlemen, push that mother all the way to the floor. Fill your car with premium. Do whatever you need to do to stay on top of this. John Comerford, National Rifle Association, NRA, ILA Executive Director. Thank you, my friend, for being here, and congratulations yet again. I hope to have you on in a couple more weeks with another congratulations, John. It's been a 1-2 punch all the way around. Thank you, sir, for everything you're doing. Ladies and gentlemen, National
Happy
Rifle...
to be on anytime.
Oh,
thank you.
You better believe it. NRA.org/AAR. Join the National Rifle Association. Do it today. It is $35 for 1 year. You can do it. You can find that in your couch cushions, okay? Coming up next from the Four Boxes Diner, constitutional attorney and Second Amendment scholar, good friend of this program, means he's a good friend of yours, Mark Smith. Next, he's waiting in the wings. We'll be right back. Good heavens, great information from John Comerford, NRA, ILA over there. If you're not a member, please join NRA.org. We make it easy for you, NRA.org/AAR, NRA.org/AAR, and take advantage of the discounts. $35 for 1 year. You don't have to donate any more money. Just join. Help us get on the roll. NRA's doing amazing work out there, as you just heard, playing a major role in all of these victories. Coming up right now, you know where to go to find all of our great partners, including Blackout Coffee. You just heard that rejoin, blackoutcoffee.com/AAR. Take advantage of that. Take advantage of the Cove Pure CP16, the water purifier. They're $250 off through the end of this month. You know where to go. Get it all. covepure.com/AAR. It's all available for you at armedamericanradio.com or .org. Joining me now, constitutional attorney and a real good friend of mine, and here he is in the Four Boxes Diner, which is live on camera with us here, constitutional attorney and scholar, Mark Smith. And Mark, guys, I got to tell you, Mark, I'll let you kind of embellish this a little bit. I want to say congratulations because your name appeared in both cert petitions for the national for both of these cases that the Supreme Court granted cert in coming up in the next term. Congratulations on that, my friend. It's good to have you here.
Hey, Mark, as you can see, I'm on the cell phone, so we couldn't quite get the audio to work, so we've gone to plan B.
Hey, man, it's radio, and you sound great on the radio, so don't worry about it, and you look great on camera, so we got you. Mark, I got a lot of questions for you. I got a lot of questions for you, and I know people want to hear what you have to say, so I'm going to start with this, the importance of the decision. Mark, you've read thousands of court opinions over your career. Where does this Third Circuit opinion rank to you in importance among the post-Bruin, and I would normally phrase that as appellate decisions, but I've got to go back now to Hamani and Wolford, and what we know is coming up with SCOTUS in the next term. Where does this rank?
Yeah, this ranks pretty high, but the reality is the handwriting is on the wall, Mark, that the U.S. Supreme Court indicated a couple years ago that they intend to fix this AR-15 mess, and they're going to do it in a way favorable to the Second Amendment. The only reason, Mark, why they didn't do it this past 12 months is because we just experienced a blockbuster Supreme Court term. We had the Trump tariff case. We had all these immigration cases. We had 2 Second Amendment cases. We had the boys competing in girls' sports and high school cases. We had the voting rights cases. It was just a very, very big blockbuster term for the Supreme Court. And the reality is they only take like 70 cases a year, and I think they just felt that in terms of managing the docket, they had to push the AR-15 question off a year because just, of workload. But, of course, they granted cert in these 2 cases, and I am, as you mentioned at the top of the show, it's true. The 2 cases where cert was granted, the lawyers did rely heavily and cite specifically to my scholarship, which is the sort of thing I teach everyone on the Four Boxes Diner about how to interpret the Second Amendment when you're dealing with an arms ban case and some of the myths that the anti-gun courts have used and how to get around them and how to point out why they're myths. But yeah, this is a huge deal. As to the Third Circuit decision, Mark, the reality is this is kind of like a paint-by-numbers decision that I think the Supreme Court's going to follow, not because the Third Circuit is teaching the Supreme Court, but because the Third Circuit is doing what the Supreme Court has already said, and now the Supreme Court's going to slam the door on these anti-gun courts that have been playing games with the proper interpretation of the Second Amendment. That ain't going to happen again.
Now, this was a Biden appointee that wrote this incredible 120-some page majority opinion here in a 10-5 decision in a complete en banc when the entire circuit heard this. This appears to be a slam dunk, Mark. Is the Supreme Court going to look at this as the roadmap? I asked John the same question, and you just alluded to it. I'm going to guess that that's, did the Third Circuit do this intentionally to school the Supreme Court? Let's put that together for listeners and viewers.
I don't think the Third Circuit was trying to educate the Supreme Court, because I think everyone understands the Supreme Court knows what they're going to do. Precedents have been clear. The lower courts have been playing games, pretending that they don't understand Supreme Court precedent, but everyone understands that those were exactly games. What really happened here was that the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit in Chicago with Frank Easterbrook basically said that we're going to uphold the Illinois law with a long opinion, and the Third Circuit says, well, we're going to respond. So essentially, the way to view this is the Third Circuit decision in Cheeseman is like an amicus brief in favor of the Second Amendment. And yes, the Third Circuit has a lot of judges that are on there that are very respected. And by the way, I think there's probably 3 judges on the Third Circuit that could potentially be elevated to the U.S. Supreme Court. So to the extent you want to build up your Second Amendment bona fides, Mark, as a lower court judge, it's a perfect opportunity to do so, to come out, A, on the right side of the Second Amendment, and B, on the right side of where the Supreme Court's likely going to rule in June of 2027.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question about Amy Coney Barrett. I haven't had a chance to ask you this yet, but I put out a theory. When she wrote the concurring opinion in the Wolford decision, I thought it was very odd because she didn't step outside anything that Alito had written. She essentially spent 34 pages agreeing with everything Alito ruled in that majority opinion. Well, hindsight is 20/20. She knew before we did, when she wrote that concurrence, that she was going to catch a lot of flack in the voting rights decision. She also knew that SCOTUS had already granted cert behind the scenes, behind closed doors, that we were not aware of yet. Was she signaling her 2A chops to us, knowing that this decision was going to come out? She was going to be attacked, deciding with the liberals, her and Roberts, and this was her way of showing us her 2A chops and not to fear her in the upcoming 2 cases that they granted cert in? Is that possible?
I don't think we have to worry about Amy Coney Barrett at all. I think there's a lot of people online that, express concerns about her, but she is a rock-solid conservative. I mean, if you want to look at the handful of cases that, she's technically come on the other side of Alito and Thomas, they were very close cases in terms of constitutionalism. Like the birthright citizenship case is a very close case where you have originalist arguments going both ways. But at the end of the day, keep in mind that these threats to Justice Barrett's life, most of which occurred after the Dobbs decision was leaked, and she stood firm and issued the Dobbs decision that knocked out Roe v. Wade, and stood firm and issued the Bruen decision. So no, I'm not worried about Justice Barrett or Justice Roberts on the AR-15 question, and I don't think we need to worry about her, frankly, at all on all the other big questions. I mean, if you look at her record, it's a phenomenal record. Again, there's a couple cases you can sort of, pick at, but I don't think, as to why she wrote that concurrence, I think there is a little back and forth between Justice Barrett and Justice Brown Jackson. And if you look at footnote number 1 of Justice Barrett's concurrence in Wolford versus Lopez, it's an extremely important footnote, not just for the AR-15 case, but for all aspects of Second Amendment jurisprudence, Mark. Specifically, she says that you're not allowed to smuggle history or historical traditions into the plain text analysis, which is what lower court after lower court after lower court have been doing in an attempt to knock out Second Amendment rights claims by the Second Amendment community. And Justice Barrett, in that footnote, made clear that should never, ever occur again. She said that was not the way to do it in the past, it's not the way to do it today, and it's not the way to interpret the Second Amendment moving forward. That is very good for us. I think that there's you got to understand, Mark, this court, in terms of the 6 conservatives, is a very smart, very highfalutin, serious theoretical court. They really care about abstract thinking and the ideology of laws and how to understand these things. They're very abstract in their thinking, and they want to get it right. So there's sometimes these sort of ideological, they're not really sort of political versus conservative versus liberal or anything like that. It's just the way to approach interpreting the Constitution. There's sometimes these internal debates between like a Justice Barrett and a Justice Alito, but for most 99% of the time, it doesn't matter. I think Justice Barrett, in her concurrence, was trying to say that she thought that some of the language in the majority opinion was a little too loose for her. And in some ways, the Justice Barrett concurrence in Wolford was a more firm Second Amendment argument than the majority. But again, these are very fine details, and I don't think any of this is going to matter to the AR-15 fight. We're going to win this. The only question is going to be is the scope of the victory and the language that finds its way into that opinion in favor of the AR-15 and how broadly it will fall. Will it cover all semi-automatic rifles? I think the answer is going to be yes.
Right.
Will it address any of these so-called scary features? I think the answer is yes. I think they'll say the features don't matter. But again, they are always laying out jurisprudence, because when the Supreme Court issues a decision, we have to live with it, not just for years, but sometimes for decades and generations. So they're very careful to try to get this right. And sometimes that gives rise to debate about the proper language. And I would not fear the AR-15 case, and I certainly would not worry about Justice Barrett. I think the online stuff a lot of it is nonsense.
Okay, when we come back, perfect timing. We're getting ready to take a break, Mark. When we come back, what I want to do is dive into Ketanji Brown's dissent with an admission that she made, and also go back to Hamani when Sotomayor also made an admission, while both justices saying they respected Bruen. Let's look at that going forward and what the decision could be. You just alluded to that. We're talking with Mark Smith, the Four Boxes Diner. He's the real deal, ladies and gentlemen. When you're cited in both those cert briefs, here he is right here. We'll be back with Mark right after the break. Don't go away. To the Four Boxes Diner, constitutional attorney and 2A scholar, Mark Smith. Mark, welcome back, brother. It's great to see you as I can talk to you. So I got to love the technology. It's great for radio. Mark, I want to go back to Ketanji Brown in her dissent, but in her opening dissent, the opening statements of her dissent, she clearly acknowledged the Bruen precedent. Sotomayor did something similar, but went a step further, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was the Hamani decision, but these things have been coming out rapid fire, where she acknowledged that guns in common use cannot be banned. How does she backtrack on one of the two upcoming cases that are being heard in October? And could this possibly be, as Alan Gottlieb alluded to, even an 8-1 decision? How do you see this shaking out? And kind of compare Kavanaugh's original statement about taking the case, and do you still believe he might be the one to write the decision?
Yeah, well, I don't think there's a real debate that at the end of the day, the U.S. Supreme Court in June of 2027 is going to issue an opinion that says AR-15 style semi-automatic rifles cannot be banned by states or any government agency under the Second Amendment, period. The question is going to be, how broad is that written? Is it going to cover, other things? Will it speak maybe a little bit to the magazine issue, even though it won't, or to suppressors, even though it won't officially decide those cases? Will it have language in there that can be used down the road? Will there be further guidance for lower courts to say to lower courts, you need to start behaving, or we're going to start summarily reversing you in an embarrassing way moving forward? And in some ways, Mark, what I'm about to say is going to sound a little counterintuitive. In certain respects, I might actually prefer to see a 6-3 win with the 6 so-called conservatives in the majority and 3 liberals in the minority, as opposed to a 9-0. The reason why I say this, and again, it's very nuanced here, is that if you have the 9 justices together, it will be unanimous. That will be very good in certain respects, but you're going to have to write that majority opinion taking into account the views and the editing process of the 3 liberals, which means they may work to narrow the scope of the opinion that we in the Second Amendment community are going to be able to use going forward. Perfect example of this, if you recall, like a year or so ago in the Smith & Wesson case, where the government of Mexico, Mark, sued Smith & Wesson and the gun industry. There were 2 ways we could have won that case, a narrow way and a broad way. The narrow way, because they basically picked off the liberals and had the liberals in the majority, they just said that under federal aiding and abetting law, Mexico could not sue the gun industry. Now, the better ruling would have been that no matter what you do, you cannot sue gun companies for the misbehavior of third-party criminals over whom they have no control. That would have been a better ruling, but I have a feeling if that were the ruling, you would not have been able to have the liberals in the majority. So again, the problem when it's unanimous, sometimes because of liberals, they narrow the scope and applicability of, like in this case, the Second Amendment and the rulings. So in some ways, I'd rather have a broader ruling 6-3 than a more narrow one that's 9-0. But it is not impossible to have a unanimous ruling that says that the AR-15 cannot be banned in the United States. It's the most common rifle, obviously. But I do, at a minimum, I think it needs to say semi-automatic rifles cannot be banned regardless of the features. That would be the best case scenario with some other favorable language that we can use in cases moving forward.
And that's the roadmap that the Third Circuit laid out. Not that the Supreme Court needs that roadmap, particularly Thomas, Kavanaugh, Alito, et cetera. They're very well versed in that. Thomas himself is. Now, I'm not going to be shocked. I believe the decision. I believe you. It's either going to be Kavanaugh or it's going to be Thomas. And I know Thomas really wants to write this decision. So, having said that, I agree with everything that you just said relative to the 6-3 and the nuance involved in that. Here's my take. If you go back to Heller, and when you look at what Scalia did, he stayed in the guardrails there. We would have liked to have seen him get outside the guardrails a little bit, stayed focused on the home because that was the case. The Heller case was about in the home. He didn't get out of those guardrails. I believe the court is going to go outside the guardrails here, and I believe they're going to take what the Third Circuit did to task. I think they are. I think it is going to be a broad ruling here. That's my guess, just based on what we've seen. I think they're going to try to put this thing to bed once and for all in a way. They know there's going to be future litigation, but I really do believe that's going to happen. Now, if you're the anti-gunners who are very quiet right now, Mark, what is their plan going forward? What can we expect from them after a slapdown in June of 2027?
Well, I think they're going to have to laser focus on somehow trying to win over the votes of Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Barrett, which I don't think is going to work, but that is what their plan will be. And the way I think they're going to do it is they're going to do what they've been doing for the last several years. They're going to say they're going to have op-eds in the New York Times and well, not the Wall Street Journal necessarily, but in the Washington Post and all the newspapers in D.C., and they're basically going to say that the legitimacy of the Supreme Court is on the line, and that's what they're going to say to scare Chief Justice John Roberts, because he's very concerned, because Chief Justice John Roberts would have been an excellent Supreme Court justice if it wasn't named the Roberts Court. But because it's the Roberts Court, I think he's much more of an institutionalist, and he's worried about the reputation of the Roberts Court because he's Chief Justice John Roberts. As to Justice Barrett, she's a very lovely lady and a very tough lady and very courageous, but I think they're going to try to appeal to her. They're going to talk a lot about mass shootings and all this other stuff to try to appeal to her emotions. I don't think any of this is going to work, by the way, but that will be the attempted strategy. And I should also say now, again, I hope, obviously, we hope nothing like this occurs, but inside Supreme Court lore, if you will, Mark, there was an understanding and kind of a belief that in 2016, the Caetano decision, the Caetano versus Massachusetts decision that said that stun guns were protected arms, if you remember, that was a per curiam decision that came out in the spring with a very powerful concurrence written by Justice Alito and Justice Thomas. There is speculation that that concurrence of Justice Alito's in 2016 was supposed to be the majority opinion of the U.S. Supreme Court, but Justice Scalia, as you know, passed away in Texas a few months earlier, and that concurrence became the concurrence. Many people thought that was going to be the majority opinion of the entire court had Scalia remained alive, and of course he didn't. So again, we always have to be sensitive to the realities on the ground. You have several older justices. They're not getting any younger. There's always a risk of someone passing away. I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, out of the blue, of course, passed away, and you don't want that to occur. You don't want to think this way, but it's the reality on the ground. Crazy things happen in politics. Look at Senator Graham just a couple weeks ago.
Good point.
So, that is the other thing you always have to consider, the harsh realities of some of the stuff.
Yeah, that's called real life, ladies and gentlemen, Mark. That's what we're talking about here, and real life does rear its head. I find the whole thing fascinating. I don't fear Roberts at this point. Roberts has ruled with us in every single pro-gun case in the majority, Mark. I don't see him backtracking at all. I agree with you. I don't think anybody's going to be successful there. I believe Amy Coney Barrett's concurrence proves that she won't as well. I think they're rock solid. I really, truly do. Minimum 6-3, could be 7-2. But, yeah, I'd love to see 9-0. Then again, there's your nuance in there as well. So a lot to talk about, ladies and gentlemen. Mark, where can people find you before we cut out?
Mark, they can find me on YouTube and on Rumble, the Four Boxes Diner channel, which, of course, is named after the Four Boxes of American Liberty. They can also find me on X's at Four Boxes Diner. So that's where they can find me. We have 260,000 subscribers and followers on YouTube. So check out the videos. I put out video basically every day, but it's very geeky, very detailed. So I warn people that it's sometimes hard work to follow the 4 boxes diner, but you will be the smartest person in the room if you do it.
There's no question about it. I love having you on. You are a great guest because it just doesn't require a whole lot of work on my part. Give you a couple questions and let you go because you've got all the answers. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Mark Smith, 4 Boxes Diner. Now you know why we love him here. Mark, we love you. Thank you for being here and for everything that you do on behalf of the Second Amendment and the education that you provide. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it very much. Ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, another Power Hour. Cam Edwards will be here, Sheriff Kurt Hoffman, Sarasota County, Florida, sitting sheriff. We're going to talk about a case in Florida that is absolutely despicable, and Sheriff Kurt was right out there calling out fellow cops. You don't want to miss it. We'll be back at 6 minutes after the hour. Don't go away. Stations across the nation. Hour 2 begins right now. If you're just joining us, welcome in. If you're rejoining us, welcome back. The comments are flying out there. If you're watching us, throw us up on YouTube. We would appreciate it. Subscribe, like, share, comment, get involved. There's over 60 comments, and they just keep rolling. And people are talking about the content today, and it's fantastic. Of course, in the last hour, wow, Power Hour with the two, John Comerford and with Mark Smith from 4 Boxes Diner. Another Power Hour coming up now with Sarasota County Sheriff Kurt Hoffman. He's on the line. We'll be with Kurt in just a moment, followed by Cam Edwards from BearingArms.com, and you know him from Cam and Company. Greg in Dallas, Texas, tell people where they can watch and participate, and we're going to get cracking.
Yeah, sure. If you're looking for us over on YouTube and Rumble, just do a search for Armed American Radio with Mark Walters. Over on X, we're at AAR Mark. You can always head on over to armedamericanradio.org or .com, hit that menu icon, then select your watch live or listen live option. And to join our live chat, all you have to do is download Telegram, create your profile, and search for Armed American Radio Conversations.
Boom, and that'll do it. So you know what? Let's go right over to Sheriff Kurt Hoffman, our good friend down in Sarasota County, sitting Sheriff Kurt Hoffman. Kurt, welcome to the program, brother. We have a lot to talk about, and we're going to kill it in a half hour, man. You ready to rock and roll? Win, 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 win. Are you sick of winning yet?
No, I'm not sick of winning, Mark. Where do you want to start? I mean, I loaded your inbox this week, right, with all the great things that are going on in my state.
Yeah.
Open carry, 18 to 20-year-olds can carry. 3-day waiting period. Bye-bye. HOAs can't prevent residents from possessing firearms. What did I miss? Non-dangerous felons can carry firearms. I mean, where do we begin?
You know, and then consider the Third Circuit, New Jersey, the smackdown, the 2 Supreme Court cases. I mean, this is just victory after victory, Sheriff. This is historic in ways I've never seen before. And I'll say this, it's kind of a love-hate relationship because, boy, we've been busy. I mean, out here 18 hours a day with content and everything else because it hasn't stopped. And I was having some conversations with Jared Yanis and some of the YouTube guys, and they're busier than they've ever been. And you know what? That's a beautiful thing. Because we are winning.
It is a beautiful thing. You know, I turned 60 this year, Mark, and I'm just kind of glad in my lifetime that I got to see that we're turning the corner here. Now, this New Jersey case, I mean, I hope that goes to Virginia, to Illinois, obviously California, some of those cases on their way to the Supreme Court. So I think this is the tip of the iceberg.
It is the tip of the iceberg. This Third Circuit decision, what was really fascinating about it, Kurt, was the fact that it was written by a Biden appointee in a 10-5 decision, a complete panel. So there's a lot going on.
I didn't know it was Biden, but I didn't know it was Biden appointee, but I did see the 10-5, and I think that's great. And look, if you just read some of these statutes that are enacted, California, the one the Pritzker's got in Illinois, I mean, they had to fall, right? I mean, it took a little bit of time for some of these cases to work their way through the system. Obviously, the makeup of the U.S. Supreme Court is in our favor, going all the way back. Bruin, Heller, McDonald. I mean, we're now finally starting to see the fruit of our labor, and by our, I mean all of us that are on the side of the Bill of Rights and the side of the Second Amendment around this country have been pushing on, trying to roll this rock uphill, right?
We the people, brother. I mean, that's what it is. You know, I had Alan Gottlieb on the program a couple weeks back, maybe 3 weeks ago. And, you know, it was the 2 cases that SCOTUS just took are Second Amendment Foundation cases. I've never been more proud of Mr. Gottlieb, and I've known him for many, many, many years. I've never been more proud of him and his efforts over the last 50 years than I am right now today. The worst part about it is I don't think retirement's around the corner for him at this point because the victories are piling up, and he is so driven to protect our Second Amendment that hopefully he gets a chance to do that because he's left one hell of a legacy. But I got to take this to McDonald decision, you know. It was the McDonald decision argued by that brilliant attorney, Alan Gura, who also won the Heller decision in 2008, and then 2 years later won the McDonald decision, wiping out that gun ban in Chicago, that incorporated the Second Amendment to the states as well, making all of this possible. All of it. Because what it did was it gave Heller teeth.
It did, for sure. And, shout out to Alan. You're 100% right on that, Mark. That guy has been carrying the banner for us. And at least if he wants to continue to work, there's going to be a lot of work there, and there's going to be a lot of victories there. So for all the hard work he put in fighting some of this stuff, like I said, rolling the rock uphill, he is winning now, and a large part of why these court cases are being overturned around the country. And like I said, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to see it in some of these other states. And it just makes life so much easier for folks like me, for sheriffs and for chiefs. And you know me, Mark, I don't get too excited about, when we had open carry come here in Florida, finally, I got calls from the media. I got calls from all these community groups. We want you to come in and talk about what a huge problem this is going to be for you. And, what do you have to say about that, Sheriff? And I said, I have to say it's long overdue. And I ended up refusing to go to those because I said, look, you guys are trying to gin something up here where there's no issue. This is crystal clear. We're finally starting to see the courts rule in that fashion. And I'm proud to say in Florida, and you were living down here in Florida for a long time, Mark, we didn't have one single hiccup. We got folks wearing guns, carrying guns, no more concealed weapon permit necessary, and life is beautiful down here. A little hot.
Yeah, it's that time of the year, and boy, throw a little global warming in there too, right? There's always that, like it never got hot before. Anyway, aside from all of that, no, you're absolutely correct. Spot on with that. The Wild West that they always like to try and create never happens, Sheriff, as you well know. Let's talk a little bit about Florida. Good heavens, would I like to see Ottmeyer be your governor. Now, that's not going to happen anytime soon. He's not running for governor. I wish he was. This guy's doing a bang-up job and is a model for other AGs all over. And we've got some good AGs. They've been on this program as well. But good heavens, this guy is just rocking the boat down there, man, and making it very clear and putting people on notice. He's like a Harmeet Dillon in Florida. Talk to us about Ottmeyer, because he's strengthening things down there now.
He is, and he is the best. He really is a great attorney general. He was down at my office a few weeks ago for a press conference that we had on some of these apps that are out there that are luring our children and trying to be predatory on our children. And we were there, and we had a chance to sit in my office and talk for about 20 or 30 minutes about this. And I just told him how much I appreciate him. I don't know if outside the state of Florida people are following as much as we are down here, but my attorney general is a letter-writing machine. That guy,
that's awesome.
That guy has written a letter to the mayor of Tampa saying you better comply and assist ICE. He's written a letter to Port St. Lucie HOA over there that you can't. Your residents don't have to leave their firearms at home. We're in the common area of a HOA property. Religious discrimination, you pick whatever the constitutional topic. And, you always hear about these kind of strict constructionist constitutionalists. James Ottmeyer is that. He fired off a letter to the Miami Dolphins. He's not afraid of anybody, and the Second Amendment is benefiting for them.
I guess a natural question when I hear you is, why would you be afraid of anybody when you have the Constitution supporting you? There's nothing to fear. The other side needs to fear people like Ottmeyer, like us, like you, because you are a constructor. You get it. You understand it. And that's where, ladies and gentlemen, coming up in the next segment, we're going to talk about a case in Pinellas Park with Sheriff Kurt, a young kid by the name of Travis Smith. We'll go there in the next segment. And I know his mother and father, I believe both of his parents, are in the chat now, and they're listening. So your words carry tremendous weight, and you made some statements that were just phenomenal. And we're going to talk about all of that, ladies and gentlemen. What you're going to hear in the next segment will blow your mind, but it won't. But it's one of those deals, Sheriff, where it will, but it won't. And, boy, you took a firm stance and made it very clear what would or would not happen in your county if the same thing occurred. So I'm teasing that, ladies and gentlemen, because I want you to stick around for the break. It's a terrible case down there. And hopefully, Sheriff, your words will carry weight, maybe with the Attorney General. I don't know. But based on what I'm seeing in Florida right now, you just never know. Greg, how much time do we have? I don't want to have to cut the Sheriff off.
50.
We've got 50 seconds, Sheriff. I'll let you finish with Ottmeyer. Tell the rest of the country why they need him, and take us to the break, and then we'll come back and talk about Travis.
Yeah, like I said, he is just he is a student of the Constitution. He is somebody who does not suffer fools lightly, and some of the letters that he has issued have been very to the point. I think we're all familiar with some of these state attorneys that we have down here. Monique Worrell, you know, she was suspended by Governor Santos. He's whacked her with 2 more letters saying, you know, the leniency that she's going using on some of these juvenile violent offenders. So he's just been a champion for all of Florida, but particularly for law enforcement, for the rule of law, and for the Second Amendment.
Florida is safe for gun owners for a long time to come, ladies and gentlemen, as a result, because it's this type of activity that strengthens it. And guess what? You don't have to live in Florida. You may vacation there. It's stronger for you now as a non-resident. God bless them for doing what they're doing. When we come back, I'm going to anger you a little bit. I got angry about it. You might see Angry Mark come out. But Sheriff, back to the show. Yeah, welcome there for you. Let's go back to Sheriff Kurt Hoffman, Sarasota County, Florida, and a great friend of this program, and proud to say a great friend of mine. All right, Kurt, let's get into a story by our very close friend, Lee the Gunwriter Williams. And I'm sure the headline disheartened you. It did me when I saw a special report when Florida police act like they're working in California. You are Florida police. You can't get any more Florida police than you as the sheriff. This is a young kid by the name of Travis Smith, who was out with his friend shooting on July 5th at his grandparents' house out in the middle of nowhere. And he winds up getting stopped for a dim tail light. And apparently somebody that had been in the car had a medical marijuana card, and there was an empty container. There was no marijuana in it, but the cop claimed it gave him, and this was Pinellas Park Police, ladies and gentlemen. We're not going to shy away from naming this department. It was Pinellas Park Police that pulled him over. By the time it was all said and done, there were over a dozen cops there. And they got into his trunk and everything else because they said that container gave him probable cause to go through the vehicle. They kept this kid on the side of the road for 3 hours. Now, here comes Angry Mark, because I smell a motion to suppress based on this. Was more than likely an illegal detention while they tried to figure out what to charge him with for 3 hours. Having said that, they find a AR pistol in the back, one of 7 guns. And, well, after viewing it, they measured it out, and they determined it had a stock on it, not what he thought was a pistol brace. The kid is now facing 10 years on a felony, and the first thing that went through my mind was, no criminal history, not even a traffic ticket. He makes a mistake. It's called officer discretion. Use it. Will you set my mind right here?
Yeah, you know, Mark, when I first saw this and Lee called me, you know, I hear about these kind of cases way too often. And just a couple of points of clarification. I think he's facing 15 years, not worse. 10. Right. And all of the other firearms were seized. So here's a finer point for your listeners. And I know you said that Travis's parents are probably listening or in the chat. And I just want to say to them, you know, not all law enforcement acts this way, but I think your listeners know I was a prosecutor for 8 years. I prosecuted a lot of cases. This case is not going anywhere. I want to give his parents some relief there. I know it's disheartening that he had to spend the night in jail and he's facing this time, but for a variety of reasons, this case isn't going anywhere. As I told Lee, you know, when you've got a law-abiding citizen who's out, you know, shooting on their relatives' property, this to me just seems like overreach. Keeping somebody there for 3 hours. And there's the issue, you know, is it a brace? Is it a buttstock? And, you know, there wasn't anything illegal about any of the other guns. I think all of the marijuana stuff, if somebody's got a medical marijuana card and it's in the card, then that should suffice. But the point I want to make to Travis's parents, to your listeners, and I know you already know this because you used to live in Florida, Mark, there's a difference between police and the sheriff's office, right?
Huge
and what is
difference.
that difference? Well, you know, chiefs of police, you know, report to the city manager. The city manager reports to the mayor. The mayor has, you know, a city council. In Florida, all 67 sheriffs now have all 67 counties, I should say, have sheriffs for this very reason. We are elected constitutional officers, and we can be held accountable at the ballot box. You can't really do anything to a police department or a chief of police. You might be able to sue, but under sovereign immunity, that's an uphill battle. So this is where I think us 67 sheriffs 65 guys and 2 ladies that we've got should be out there, carrying the water for, folks that are out there not doing anything wrong, standing up for them. And I would be ashamed if this occurred in my county. And I've told your listeners before, when you educate your workforce, when you train your workforce, when you give your workforce specific training on firearms, on Second Amendment issues, I guarantee you, Mark, if you picked any one of my deputies off the road or you saw him out for lunch and you said, come here, what's your sheriff say about the Second Amendment? They would have something to say,
right,
because I've communicated that to my people. And what happened here really is just a travesty. There's not anybody committing a crime, and they went out of their way, 3 hours out of their way, to find something. I'm not the least bit happy about it.
Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I know you're listening to the program today, and I hope you take the sheriff's words to heart, because Sheriff Kurt's words do carry great weight in the state of Florida, and I know other people are listening to this conversation. So take that to heart. I hope you feel a little bit better about that, because we've got your back here. We're going to continue to follow this case, and we're going to report to our listeners that this is all going to go away. I have that gut feeling too, Sheriff. I really, truly do. I would not be shocked if I saw Utmeyer or even the governor get involved in something like this, because it has gotten a lot of attention, and we bring a lot of attention to it, as well as your words, which carry great weight in the state of Florida. And I hope that, happens.
Mark, Travis is about the age of my son, and I wouldn't want him to be in this situation.
No, but what does that say? And I'm not here, I'm a huge supporter of law enforcement. That's why this is so disheartening to me. Is there nothing better to do in Pinellas Park? Now, guys, I've lived in Florida for a long time. I know about Pinellas Park. There's real crime in Pinellas Park, ladies and gentlemen, okay? That 13 cops seems like a real overreach to me. Wouldn't you expect your officers on the side of the road in a situation like that to call you and ask you for some sound advice? I don't know if they called the chief or not. I don't know. But you're right. Those are political appointees and political positions. Maybe they didn't because they thought they were doing the bidding of the politician. I don't know.
Well, the policy of the Sarasota Sheriff's Office is set by the Sarasota Sheriff. I can assure you that the policy of some of these smaller municipal police departments are not set by the chief of police. They're set by, in most cases, some left-leaning liberal city councils, and that's where they get in trouble. And that's the single biggest difference between sheriffs and police departments is that there's not the accountability that you have with elected officials.
Well, Sheriff, a lot of people don't. I think a lot of listeners of Armed American Radio are educated about this, but most Americans do not know that the sheriff is the oldest constitutionally elected office in the country. Most people are unaware of that.
The first 2 sheriffs in Florida were appointed by Andrew Jackson when he was the territorial governor. It goes all the way back to the 1800s. So, and even beyond that in some other jurisdictions. So there's a reason for that. There's a reason why we're elected, and the reason why when we raise our right hand, swear to uphold that Constitution, for the most part, we do a pretty damn good job of it.
Yeah, you do. I know that. And we're coming to the end of the segments, Sheriff. I really appreciate you being here and accommodating our schedule. We have a lot of people that wanted to get in because such huge news out of the Third Circuit. AM 930 listeners in Sarasota, Florida, you got a good one there, ladies and gentlemen. Keep electing him to office and do yourself a solid. Sheriff Kurt Hoffman, Sarasota County, Florida. Sheriff, we thank you, brother, for being here. You know we love you. And just in case nobody's told you that today, Kurt, I love you, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it, so you can take that one to the bank. Sheriff Kurt Hoffman, Sarasota County. You better believe it. Cam Edwards, BearingArms.com, and Cam & Company coming up next to round up what has been another powerful hour. We'll no doubt be talking about the Third Circuit, and we'll get some insight from Cam Edwards. He just makes my life so much easier. He's going to make your life easy, too. We'll be right back.
By the way, we're halfway done.
Yep, hold on one second. Your mic's live. Hey, guys, you got Mark and Greg here. And I just wanted to thank Sheriff Kurt, and I wanted to thank Travis's parents for being in here. And I hope you took to heart what the sheriff said. And there's so many comments in here on this right now. Someone else had also wondered if Tate Adamiak is still in prison. The answer to that question is yes. We're hopeful we're going to get some good news. That's been another case that's been eaten at us here that we're working very, very hard on to bring a tremendous amount of publicity to. And we've gotten it all the way to the White House. So hopefully we get good news on that. We're coming back with Cam Edwards in about 15 seconds. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Great to be here with you today. Armed American Radio's Monster Cast been a powerhouse two-way two-way powerhouse lineup all evening, and we're now halfway through and getting ready to move into the latter part of the second hour. Before I get going to Cam Edwards, I've got to ask Greg this question, because that was a Blackout Coffee rejoin. They've been very long days, Greg, so that's a hint. How many cups of Blackout Coffee do you think I had to start my day today?
I'm going to lean in on 3.
I had 3 to start my day. You're spot on. I generally don't have more than that. It makes me a little bit too shaky. But I also use Cove Pure water from my Cove Pure CP16 water purifier to put in the coffee maker when I make the Blackout Coffee. You can do the same thing. CovePure.com/AAR, $250 off for you through the remainder of the month. We're trying to extend that to August. We were able to get it from June through July. No guarantee there, but you've got just under 2 weeks. Take advantage of that huge discount over there on their own website. It's $50 off. So that's an AAR exclusive. It's $250 off at CovePure.com/AAR, BlackoutCoffee.com/AAR. And you can find all of them and all of our great partners at ArmedAmericanRadio.com. Let's go over to Cam Edwards. Cam, brother, where do we even start, man?
I mean, I think we have to start with the Third Circuit, right?
Yeah, we got it. We got to go there, man. I'll tell you what. Have you ever seen? You've been doing this a long time. You and I together have got 50 years in this, brother. And even though they're running concurrent, so I want to point that out. But it's still 50 combined years. I've never seen anything like this, and I can't wait for listeners to hear your perspective on this show, which is fun to have you on because I get to question you, as a guest and maybe take you down some different pathways. I personally believe this is a roadmap for SCOTUS. Now, when I say that, Cam, I don't mean that the Third Circuit is trying to enlighten the court what to do, but I think what they're doing here is that they're laying out the foundation based on what this Supreme Court has already said, giving them that roadmap in a 122-plus page decision. I think it's closer to 200 pages when you got all the dissents in there as well, right? But is that, do you read it that way?
So I think you can read it that way, Mark. I think you can also read it as the Supreme Court, as the Third Circuit following the Supreme Court's roadmap, right? And I mean, when you look at who wrote this decision, this was not one of the conservative members of the Third Circuit.
Right.
This was a Joe Biden appointee, a former public defender, who wrote one of the strongest defenses for the Second Amendment that we've seen from the federal courts.
You better believe it, brother.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't know if this judge, I don't know how she feels about gun owners or guns in general. But it seems to me that she took what the Supreme Court has said and applied it properly. So we didn't have any of this nonsense that we've seen from the Fourth Circuit or the Second Circuit or the Ninth Circuit where, well, maybe these aren't really arms at all. No, the Supreme Court said in Wolford, arms are things that can be used for offense or defense. And if you're dealing with a law that deals with arms, then presumptively that law is unconstitutional.
Right.
It's up to the state to show that it's not. I think she cut through all of the clutter, all of the baloney arguments that we've seen develop over the past few years. And really, she came down just like you and I have talked about. Mm-hmm. Are these arms? Yes. Are these arms in common use? Yes. Well, if they're in common use, they can't be dangerous and unusual. And so, therefore, if an arm's in common use for lawful purposes, it is protected by the Second Amendment. And she saw this just like Heller was a ban on an entire class of arms. So, too, are bans on so-called assault weapons. They are bans on semi-automatic centerfire rifles. And she didn't get into this, well, what about with this feature? What about that feature? No. If the centerfire semi-automatic rifle is banned, then that's unconstitutional. And she went back and she left it up to the lower court to decide if that holds true for the semi-automatic shotguns and handguns that are included under New Jersey's ban on so-called assault weapons. But again, based on the majority opinion, it's pretty clear that they are.
Well, Cam, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're very familiar. We've talked about these cases together on and off air for a long, long time. And with the ones that we've just seen with Wolford, of course, and Hamani, we could go all the way back to Rahimi. I mean, you got them all. They're lining up. We're 5-0. Mm-hmm. But let's specifically look at Ketanji Brown for a moment. Let's look at Sotomayor. Now, Ketanji Brown's the dumbest person that's ever sat on that court. And I think you and I have had that discussion before. She's just a moron. You can tell whoever the staff is or clerk writing this stuff, she sounds like a little child. But she did acknowledge the precedent set by Bruen. She acknowledged it in the opening statement of her dissent in Wolford. Sotomayor went as far as quoting Bruen in I believe it was the Hamani case, correct me if I'm wrong, where she admitted that guns in common use cannot be banned. Now, you and I talked about how does she backtrack from that? Now, let's apply the Third Circuit decision. Will they read that decision? Could that sway them because they've made those statements when they look at how well laid out this decision is?
It should sway them.
It should.
Whether or not it will, I don't know, because I think Ketanji Brown Jackson is very much a political justice, right? So I think she's going to do. Sotomayor and Kagan, I think, have a little bit more respect for the law and for the Constitution and for Supreme Court precedent. So, I mean, I've already been kind of on the fence about Kagan in United States versus Mexico versus Smith and Wesson. She said that AR-15s were the most popular rifle in the country. Could this sway Sotomayor? I mean, it could, and again, arguably it should. I don't think we're going to get a 9-0 decision that Cook County's gun ban, state of Connecticut's gun ban is unconstitutional. I would love to see it. I don't think we're going to get it, but maybe this takes us from 6-3 to 7-2.
It's possible, and I don't really care. I'm going to take the win. You win a basketball game, you win a soccer game by 1 goal. It's a win. You take the W, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get a W at SCOTUS. I don't really care how it shakes out. I just want the W. It'll be interesting to read this. Now, from what I understand, you correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this case is slotted for the first oral argument at the term. The two of Viramontes and Higgins, both of these cases, I believe, is the first case that you're going to hear at the beginning of the next term. Is that true? Do you know?
It's going to be pretty close to the first oral argument. Yeah, I mean, I think the briefing schedule came out, and the petitioner's brief is due on the 28th, and then the reply brief is due.
I should know that.
I think 28th of August, and I think the reply brief's due in October. So I think we're looking at oral arguments probably taking place in early December.
Okay, I hope it's in December because I really don't want it to happen in October, and I got to wait till June. Because this is going to be the final decision that comes out. There's no doubt they're going to put a lot of thought into this, particularly I believe in light of what the Third Circuit just did in their decision. It is going to carry some weight. That decision will no doubt carry some weight. How do you feel? I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked of our other guests in the first hour. If you're an anti-gunner, what is going through your mind right now, brother? What are you thinking? Wow, right?
You're thinking about packing the court when Democrats occupy the White House again, right?
No doubt.
You're telling yourself, well, we can do permit to purchases because they said that shall issue permits, those are okay. I think you're already thinking about, all right, well, what do we do when we lose here? And I think what you're going to see is what we're seeing roll out in Colorado right now, albeit with, I think, the same kind of anti-gun animosity we're seeing in places like California, where it can cost up to $2,000 to get your concealed carry license. I think you'll look at blue states, try to enact some sort of permit to purchase scheme. You got to have, 18 hours of training before you can purchase an AR-15. Permit's going to cost you $250. You got to renew it every 2 years. Yeah. They're going to try to put up those economic barriers to exercising this constitutional right to owning these commonly owned arms.
I don't know how successful they're going to be at that. We're getting ready to take a break, Cam. There's the music. I don't know how successful they'll be, but they will try, ladies and gentlemen. While the cavalry is coming, if you live in one of those states, I'll just tell you now, if you can get out, get out. If you can, you should anyway. But if not, the cavalry is coming. You will be able to own the weapon of your choice in the very near future. There's no question. It's just what kind of hoops are they going to make you jump through, and what kind of litigation will follow after that? Second Amendment Foundation, NRA, and the others will be there to fight it. We'll be right back. Hey, guys. I have gotten a couple questions and some emails and text messages from some new viewers that want to know what that guitar is behind me. See if I can pull that up for you without screwing anything up. Probably not. There it is. That's a Gibson SG. back there. The real deal. That's a Ebony Gibson SG. Yeah, that's the same one Angus Young plays, you guys. And she's a beauty. During this break, I just got up and turned off the Marshall amp over there. Those tubes have been cooking all afternoon, and I'm dying to play it. My neighbors hate me already, and they'd probably hate me at 9:47 p.m. during a break if I did that, or even worse, after the show, which I've been known to do. I just have to keep it at low volume. So those of you that asked, thank you, and you will be hearing some cool stuff. We're going to do some subscription stuff that those of you can come in before the show if you want to join us privately, where we can rip some copyrighted tunes because it's not streaming live. So stick around for that. We'll be right back with Cam in about 15 to 20 seconds. Thanks for asking. I do appreciate it. Always love to talk guitars. Be sure to check them out, PendletonSafes.com. These things are absolutely beautiful. Your guns come to you. You will never stress when you open your gun safe ever again with handguns and magazines. It's all laid out for you. They rotate. Your gun comes right to you. Same thing for your valuables. They're expensive for a reason. Think about what you're putting in it is worth far more than the cost of the safe. These things are absolutely beautiful. Make sure to check them out at PendletonSafes.com. Do your shopping over at our exclusive online retailer, BudsGunShop.com. They've got every accessory you can imagine. Over 6 million customers. Take advantage. BudsGunShop.com. They have everything you want and need, and you need and want everything they have. Match made in heaven. And join all of the organizations around the country. You can find all of our great partners, including POG Auctions, AZCDL, VCDL, CCDL, all the great gun groups, Second Amendment Foundation, and National Rifle Association. They're all available for you at armedamericanradio.com or .org. Let's go back to Cam Edwards, Cam and Company, and BearingArms.com. Cam, I want to take you now to two words I think are just a game changer from that Third Circuit decision that are coming from Bruin and coming from Heller. And these two words are going to make all the difference in the world, which is why I believe we're going to see a broader ruling here, as I was talking about with Mark Smith, a good friend of both yours and mine, that we could see a broader decision here than we've seen relative to other cases because the way the Third Circuit laid it out. But common use is going to, those two words are going to play a major role in the upcoming SCOTUS decisions, are they not?
And, I was really pleased to see how the majority approached that phrase, because, again, we've seen lower courts abuse it so that it's, are these guns in common use for self-defense? And in order for that to be answered affirmatively, a majority of cases, or like 40% of cases, would have to be self-defense, triggers pulled of an AR-15, stopping a burglar or an intruder or carjacker, right? And those numbers aren't there. I mean, these are guns that are rarely used in crime. A lot of people own them for self-defense, but thankfully they don't actually have to pull the trigger, right? The judge and the majority, noted that, first of all, the common use test is not solely about self-defense. Mm-hmm. It's common use for lawful purposes, which is what we've been pointing out for years. Well, of course. Right? And these lower courts keep abusing this. And no, it's got to be for self-defense. No, it doesn't. It's for any lawful purpose. It's for hunting. It's for competitive shooting. It's for collecting. It's for prevention of tyranny, as well as self-defense, right? All of those are legitimate uses for firearms. And the Third Circuit recognized that this goes beyond self-defense. And then we got into the argument about, how many is enough, and is it really just a matter of counting? Because what happens if a government, can they ban a gun before it gets popular? The Third Circuit didn't really. That's not the issue here, right? Maybe that's an issue that gets fleshed out in future cases when, we come up with
that's a great
laser
question
rifles,
you just asked,
right?
Yeah, great question.
But we don't have to answer that question now. These guns clearly are in common use. There are tens of millions of them in this country, and they're in common use for lawful purposes. And so, again, we saw this decision cut through the clutter, cut through all of these ridiculous arguments that other courts have put up. And it was so great to see the Third Circuit. The dissent, there were I think 3 different dissents. One of them was very insistent that, all these other circuit courts, I mean, they've said that these gun bans are fine. I don't know why we're going off on our own, because those other courts are wrong.
They're wrong.
Right?
That's why.
and it takes courage. I mean, this is one thing I've noticed, Mark. I'm sure you've noticed this too. Like, when you're growing up, your mom would say, well, if all your friends jumped off a cliff, would you do it too?
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of appellate courts who would absolutely jump off a cliff because another court has done it.
Ideology.
And absolutely. Well, and even, this sort of like precedent. Well, why does it matter if the Ninth Circuit said these gun bans are legal 10 years ago? What weight should we give that? I mean, we now have more scholarship. We certainly have more, Second Amendment jurisprudence from the Supreme Court. I was just really impressed with the thoroughness of the Third Circuit's decision. It really was.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating. I mean, there were, I think, 3 dissents. I think there were 4 concurring opinions. I mean, so everybody wanted to have their say.
Yeah.
On this, and there were some concurring opinions that said, listen, I would have gone even further. I don't know why we're limiting this to semi-automatic rifles and not including every gun that was
let's go there.
The so-called assault weapon.
Let's go there with the 2 minutes we have left. That leads me right into my next question, so it's a perfect segue. It's why I love having Cam on, ladies and gentlemen. It's like he's in my mind, okay? Because he is in my mind. We're like-minded here. The Glock bans, this is going to come back to haunt the Democrats. The weasels, look, if you suffer from the disease known as liberalism, ladies and gentlemen, you might want to turn the dial right now because you're not going to like what we're talking about. The Glock bans right now, California, Maryland, Illinois considering, et cetera. This is all going out the window. This is why I think we're going to get a broader scope ruling here, Cam, because the liberals have all claimed now that Glock is an assault firearm. Oh, that's going to come back to bite you come December or June, depending on when, if you want to look at the oral argument date or you want to look at the decision date. It's going to come back to bite them. That's why I think we get a broader ruling here. And when you look at what they did with magazines, and then you look at what they did with magazines in the takings clause, they didn't have to use the takings clause because they found magazine bans were in fact unconstitutional, so they didn't even have to address it. Fascinating decision all the way around. Again, that's that roadmap. I think they get outside the bounds here, Cam. Am I right?
I sure hope you're right. And look, we did see with Wolford, they didn't address any other gun-free zones, but they certainly went more broader and deeper, I think, than they needed to go in striking down the vampire rules. So, it's entirely possible that even though they're not taking up one of these mag ban cases, that they mention magazine bans, or at least the route that they go to strike down a ban on so-called assault weapons, it clearly encompasses magazines too. We'll see. We've got, I think, a little bit less than a year to go before we get this decision, but I feel really good.
Oh, I do too.
I think this is an historic time. I hope that people understand it takes a lot of money to bring these cases to the Supreme Court.
And years.
And even once they're there, absolutely. But the filing fees are incredible. So if you can support these Second Amendment organizations, please do, because this is a critically, historically important time for a right to keep bear arms in the courts.
Yeah, it's a perfect place to call it right there, Cam. We appreciate you very much. Thank you for being here, man. Thank you so much. Always fun.
Always appreciate the invite, man.
Yeah, man, it's a lot of fun. And guys, you can always catch me on Cam and Company. Just pay attention. We'll let you know when I'm going to be on. Cam's a regular guest on the program as well. Cam and Company, and make sure to read everything they put out at bearingarms.com as well, bearingarms.com. Cam Edwards is the real deal. And I always love it, Greg, when Cam is on with us, because he just makes my life so much easier, because these guys are so good at what they do, and they bring out the best in everybody. The lineup's been like that all day. Now, guys, coming up in the next hour, we're going to do a deep dive into all of this, because the Roundtable crew has been listening, and it's been historic. So we're going to talk about all of this and get the opinion from each of them, from what they've heard from the guests that we've had on today, and we'll go in a few other directions as well. But that will be Ryan Petty, of course, Parkland father Ryan Petty. He's been tuned in, spoke with him during a break. Car Arms CEO Justin Moon. We're in the Car Firearms Group studios. Justin will be here. He's a fan favorite for a reason. If you're new to the show, you're going to love him. I can promise you that. And sitting in for Brad Primo, who is traveling the world right now, Real America's Voice reporter and Armed American Radio Roundtable OG member Neil McCabe will be here. So another Power Hour coming up. We'll be back at 6 after the hour. Don't go away. We'll see you on the radio in just a few minutes. Hey, guys. We're going to be back with you here at 6 minutes after the hour. Got the Knights of the 2A Roundtable graphic popping up there, keeping in mind that Brad Primo is being replaced by Neil McCabe, our voice in Washington for many, many years. He's on camera if you're new to the program. Neil's an on-camera reporter at Real America's Voice, and he's been around the block and reporting from the White House grounds in Washington, D.C. for many, many years, and that's where he's based at right now with Real America's Voice. So make sure to check him out at Real America's Voice and say, hey, I know him. I see him on Armed American Radio, and you do on a regular basis. He's been here for many, many, many years. So I hope you've enjoyed the program today. I want to thank each and every one of you. There's a ton of comments out there, and I apologize. It's really hard to keep up with everything while we're live and running the boards and running a national radio program, a top 100 national radio program, I might add, for the second year running across the country. And I thank each and every one of you for that. Please subscribe to us over at YouTube. Hit the like button, the subscribe button, ring the little bell, the notifications, and get notifications. I see that many of you have. I've seen the numbers go up. And guys, I want to point out, for a long time, they were real unfriendly to us because of the politics that we talked about. Those days are over, and we're putting out some great content. Those of you who don't have time, and it's most of you, quite frankly, it would be me too. If I had to work a 9 to 5 and didn't do this all day long, I wouldn't be able to read these decisions. Like, this was 130 or, well, basically 190 pages over there on that. But I put out a video last night that's got a lot of views. I did about a 5-minute and 32-second deep dive, but really in just layman's terms, no legalese, breakdown, and I split it into 5 parts as to what that Third Circuit decision did and why it matters. Go check out that video. You can check us out at youtube.com/@ArmedAmericanRadio, youtube.com/@ArmedAmericanRadio. And while you're there, subscribe to us. We'd appreciate it very much. It really helps the channel grow. Get in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on it. But it was a real simple, basic explanation as to why it mattered. And guys, I'm telling you what, and I said in the video, it doesn't matter whether you're an enthusiast, a gun owner, or not. But if you just like watching the Supreme Court, you like the way precedent is set, if you're just a junkie on that kind of stuff, you'll appreciate it. And the next term coming up is going to be absolutely historic for all of us. So it's a great time to start learning a little bit about what's going on. But we, in 5.5 minutes, break down that 150 pages, really 122 pages, really, of the majority opinion for you. And you can catch that over at Armed American Radio. And it's listed as a SCOTUS roadmap, New Jersey gun ban. And that's the graphic that you'll see, the thumbnail. So click on that. You can also find all of our other great videos over there. You'll enjoy watching them. So we appreciate it. Thanks. Subscribe to us. We'll be back here at 3 minutes live with the Roundtable crew. That will be Parkland Father Ryan Petty for new viewers and new listeners. Not just Ryan Petty, but Justin Moon, CEO of Car Arms, of course, and Neil McCabe will be here from Real America's Voice. We'll be with you in just under 3 minutes, about 2 minutes here. Right back. Gentlemen, I better stop sipping on those sugar-free Red Bulls at this time of day on the East Coast. Greg in Dallas, Texas. How you doing today, man? Welcome inside the Car Firearms Group studios at the Patriot Mobile Ranch. The CZ microphone fired up for you. Greg in Dallas, how you doing, brother?
Not too bad, man. Just trying not to melt over here.
Yeah, oh boy, I know. Ladies and gentlemen, it gets hot. If it looks like I'm sweating, or Jared Yanis saw one of the videos I put out. He says, that was a really good video. You need to turn the AC on in your studio.
Yeah.
It gets hot in here, guys.
You gotta know the battle.
A lot of electronic equipment going on in here, but I keep it off because I don't want it to be picked up by the mics. Greg says it's never picked up by the mics, but I can hear it.
It's not a problem.
If
I can hear it, it's not that big of a problem.
Yeah, well, you know, there's a few hundred radio stations taking the show, too, and we thank every one of them and all of our great affiliates. It still blows my mom's mind that after 18 years on the air, I've never been thrown off of a radio station because of something I said. We've never lost an affiliate. We just keep adding them, and that's such a beautiful thing. That's how you know you're on the right program, guys. Make sure to visit us over at YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, get involved in the comments. We are reading them during the breaks. I'm not going to be able to get to too many of them. Maybe I will, but it just depends. It's very busy in the studios. We're bringing you the program. Greg, tell people where to watch the program, get involved in those chats, and then we will get started introducing the crew.
Yeah, sure. To find us on YouTube and Rumble, just do a search for Armed American Radio with Mark Walters. Over on X, we're at AAR Mark. You can always head over to armedamericanradio.org or .com. Hit that menu icon, then select your watch live or listen live option. And to join our live chat, just download Telegram, create your profile, and search for Armed American Radio Conversations.
Boom. That'll do it. Let's start with, well, Ryan Petty's on camera, so we'll start with Ryan Petty. Ryan, how you doing? I see you. You're looking good. It's good to see you on the radio, my brother. How are you? And your name on the back graphic happens to be right below your camera, so it looks pretty good.
Look at that. I'm Ryan Brad.
I'm Mark Justin. Let's go to Justin Moon, CEO of Car Arms. Justin, welcome in, my brother. We have a lot to talk about with you today. How you doing, man?
Doing good, Mark. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Historic times, brother. Can't wait to have this conversation with you. And guys, you all know him. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're new to the program, I'm going to introduce you to him right now, but he is an OG on the roundtable, has been with this program for well over a decade and a half, and you'll notice that he's losing his Boston accent. That's Neil McCabe, formerly of redstate.com, but he's no longer there. He's with Real America's Voice, and I don't know how to do that in a Boston accent, but he'll tell us in a second. Neil, welcome in.
Hey, Mark, I'm thrilled to be on with you, and I got to tell you, soccer is such a great sport. I'm really looking forward to when they play it again in 4 years.
Okay, yeah, all right. I'm just going to leave it at that right there. I didn't pay any attention to it. I don't. I did pay attention, and you know what? That's a topic of conversation. Let's go there. I'm glad you brought it up, Neil, because Bill Maher himself put a montage out that I thought was fantastic. I got to hand it to Bill Maher. I mean, he has done, he has stayed middle of the road while the party shifted way left commie on him. And he has stayed middle of the road as far as he's always been a far lefty, but they make him look like a moderate or almost like a Fetterman Republican at this point. Good heavens. But he put a montage out on how people who were just flooding social media, Neil, with how great America is because all they hear is a bunch of crap on their fake news over there, including a lot of American fake news that they get over there. I'd like your thoughts on that. Soccer aside.
Well, when I was a kid, I would complain about America to my dad, and he would always say, well, I've been all over the world, and there's no other country better than the United States. And you hear people say that over and over and over again, and to have literally millions of people come here to watch these games and experience, just the hospitality of these different cities and to see how real Americans live, it's got to be the best advertisement in the world for America and our way of life. And hopefully, they'll go home and they'll tell this story back home, and it'll maybe change how people see us. There's a lot of people trying to get into this country. There's not a lot of people leaving it.
That's a great point. Justin Moon, we have thousands of new viewers right now and new listeners around the country on new affiliates. Would you be kind enough to introduce your family's history and why this is an important topic of conversation for you? Because you know more than anyone here what this country means.
Well, America is the greatest country in the world to live in by far compared to any other country on the earth. I mean, my dad was in a communist concentration camp. He got liberated by General MacArthur when he came up north, and he pushed up to the Yellow River. That was up in Hungnam. And, communism is a horrible thing. And, if you look at history, it's the governments of countries which make the lives miserable for people. And communists have killed over 250 million people during its short history of less than a century and a half. So God bless America, and hopefully we can keep the commies at bay in this country because they're everywhere these days.
Well, let's go there. I'm glad you mentioned that. And we'll come back around to, I'll just ask you this question first, quickly. Are you disheartened to see communism infiltrating the left to the degree it is? That's always been a part of the left, okay? The Democrats, socialist nonsense, what's going on in New York. The commies are everywhere now, and the Democrat Party seems to be embracing that wing of the party. How disheartening is it to you, whose family knows the perils and dangers and death and misery created by communism?
Well, it's very disheartening, but we're in this horrible situation for a reason, and that's what we got to understand. We got to realize that we have a problem in our country, and the problem is that the opportunities which used to exist for the middle class are rapidly disappearing in our country, and we're getting a kind of ossified oligarchy running our country, and they're pulling up the ladder and preventing people from having an avenue to move up the socioeconomic ladder. And so we really do have to pay attention to what's happening in America these days, and we have to fix it. We have to return this country back to the small, limited government which ensures opportunity for all people.
Yeah, Ryan, that's where Rush Limbaugh used to call them, the skulls full of mush. That's where the youngsters come in. And by youngsters, I'm talking 20s, maybe late teens, maybe up to early mid-30s before they get out there and really start making some money and having to start paying some taxes. They fall prey to this nonsense, and that's very dangerous. That's why we're seeing the AOC, the Bernie Sanders, the idiot that guy is. That people still follow him is mind-boggling. The hypocrisy that drips from him, multi-millionaire Bernie Sanders talking about oligarchs. It's a joke, but they fall for this crap, Ryan. They do.
They do, and we talked about this before. You know, the left captured education beginning in the 60s, mid-60s, and they've owned it ever since. And so it shouldn't be surprised. We shouldn't be surprised that several generations of our young people are economically and politically illiterate, or at least what they've learned has been whitewashed in favor of things like socialism. And
yeah, it's a shame.
So that's what's happened. As I conclude my term on the Florida State Board of Education, one of the things I'm most proud of is the restoration of civics education that we've done in the state of Florida, and our students are benefiting from an historically accurate view of both our country, right, and the history of Western civilization in general.
Well, my kids did the same thing here in the Deep South in the state of Georgia. We had a great education. They got great civics, but the rest of the country, a lot of areas in the country don't get that. In fact, they get just the opposite. All cops are bad. Everybody who doesn't agree with you is bad. They get all this nonsense. Neil, you report on this stuff and have. Now, Greg, I know we're getting ready to take a break. How much time here?
60.
We've got 60 seconds. Neil, let me just set this up, and then I'll go to you. You can take us to the music, and we'll come back. But you've reported on this for a while. You heard Justin, and you heard Ryan. Your thoughts real quick in 30 seconds before the music starts.
Well, it's our education system, right, is designed to confuse our children so that they cannot make decisions correctly. And so, why it's almost like you can't blame these kids for thinking that socialism is a good idea, because that's all they've ever been told. Our entire education system has been set up to twist up these kids so that they're like sheep being like herded into a slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
It's absolutely outrageous.
You try to confuse. When we come back from the break, we're going to continue the conversation. What does that have to do with guns, ladies and gentlemen? It has everything to do with guns. Here's why. If you're new to the program, you'll figure this out real quick. During the break, I want you to think about what party it is that's coming after your guns and ask yourself this question: why? In fact, that's your homework for tonight. When you lay your head down on your pillow sometime after the show today, ask yourself that question. It will become clear to you, I promise. You don't need my help there. We'll be back with the crew right after the break. Don't go away. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been quite a remarkable run. Justin Moon, I'm going to go to you. I had a exchange, and I'm going to shout out CR3W1 Show 3S. Now, I'm sure he's listening. His real name is Brian. And Justin, I was unaware that he knows you. This was a YouTube comment that came in on a video I put out. And it says, Mark, I've listened to your show on podcast for a while. This is the first time I've actually seen you. Once again, you didn't look like I expected. People never do. Laugh out loud. To which I responded, oh, I get it. I'll never forget the first time I saw Howard Stern years ago. I never listened to him again. I hope you're not going to suffer the same fate. To which he replied, laughing, I don't base my listening on looks, purely content, and yours is spot on. It's funny. You have a mental image of someone, and it just never matches up. Like a voice has anything to do with how someone looks. Carry on, my brother. Keep fighting the good fight. Cheers from New Jersey. I responded and told him it was good that he didn't think that way. And he replied back to me 5 hours ago, Justin, with this. I was just at Justin's place in PA working on a few of his Kiwa horizontal mills. My company will be installing a few machines that were recently moved from his other facility. One was making Tommy gun receivers. Nice gun store attached to the main factory as well. My real name is Brian. I'm sure he remembers me. 6'7" with a ponytail. I'm hard to forget. Justin, there's your shout out, brother.
Yeah, I remember Brian. He's a hell of a machine repairman. So,
well, Brian, there's your shout out.
Enthusiast.
Yeah, 6'7". You know, I'm not even worried. 6'7", you're going to remember. Forget the ponytail, okay? 6'7", no doubt. Brian, there's your shout out, man. Thanks for the laugh earlier today. I do appreciate it, guys. We do pay attention and we do read those comments, and I try to respond to as many of them as I can as the show grows bigger and bigger and bigger, both on radio and online. It's getting tougher and tougher, but it is really fun to do. So, Justin, I'm going to stick with you. I'm going to move away from the communist stuff. Let's go to the Third Circuit case, which is the meat and potatoes of today's show. Now, you're in Pennsylvania. You're in the Third Circuit. When the Third Circuit ruled en banc 10-5, and a Biden appointee wrote what is arguably the strongest opinion regarding Second Amendment issues, particularly as it pertains to gun bans, you had to do a happy dance, Justin, because you're in the Third Circuit. And I got a visual of you doing a happy dance because I know you so well and so long. Did you do a happy dance? Had to feel good.
Absolutely.
Tell us about it.
President Trump's selection of these Supreme Court justices and the remaking of the court has really transformed our fundamental rights, especially when it comes to 2A. And he is by far, in terms of advancing our 2A rights through the courts, by far the best U.S. president in a very long time.
Oh, there's no question. Now, Ryan, let's and we're going to stay on this Third Circuit for a while. And Neil, I can't wait to get your opinion on this as well, because you always are into the deep dive here from the political standpoint. But Ryan, you're an FFL. Of course, for new viewers and listeners, you lost your daughter at Parkland, and you have been fighting for Second Amendment rights ever since, because your daughter would have done the same thing. And a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their head around that. And I want you to explain to listeners around the country why this is so important, and why, when you saw what happened with the Third Circuit, knowing what's coming in October, November, December, when that oral argument is held and that decision comes out in June, tie this all together for us, because they love to demonize America's most popular rifle. I'll let you take it away. Ladies and gentlemen, pay careful attention to Ryan here, please.
Yeah, look, this goes back to 2018 and that fateful day, Valentine's Day, the last time I saw my daughter. Look, it would have been easy to blame the gun, right? The cacophony of voices around me after Parkland. I mean, I had school board members of the media, the sheriff at the time. I mean, they were all pointing the finger at the Second Amendment and at firearms. And it didn't take much effort to step back and say, wait a minute, there were a lot of failures that led to my daughter's death and the death of 16 others that day. None of it had to do with the Second Amendment. Everything had to do with failures of government, failures to hold our elected officials accountable, and much like 9/11, I will say, a failure of imagination on the part of the school district to think that something could happen like what happened that day at a school. And so the last thing that I wanted coming off of that tragedy was for my daughter's name, frankly, my name or my family's name, associated with additional punitive gun control. And I've tried to do everything that I can to protect our schools and defend our constitutional rights. Those two are not mutually exclusive, and the left would have us believe that you must ban firearms to protect, for safety and security, and to protect our schools and our communities. And I'm telling you, nothing could be further from the truth. We are safest when we are free.
And, I'm going to take it a step further with Neil. Neil, you heard those comments from Ryan. Heartfelt. And let me say this, Ryan, on behalf of all of our listeners around the country, well over 1.5 million listeners across the country right now, that you and your family, who I know personally, are a national treasure. And we thank you for what you're doing. Always have and always will. Neil, you heard what Ryan had to say, and you know Ryan for quite some time. You've been a guest with him on the show over the years. I'm going to take it a step further, because the irony here is not lost on me, and I know it's not lost on Ryan and his family. Neil, I'll go ahead and mention this and then come back to you on this from the break. So take this to the break with you, if you would. But the irony here, the huge, horrible irony is, if someone there was armed, this would have been stopped. That's the terrible irony of all of this. Neil, when we come back, I want you to comment on what you just heard from Ryan and what I just said there, and take it away. When we come back from the break, we're going to go to Neil McCabe from Real America's Voice to continue the conversation, and we will continue taking a deeper dive into the Third Circuit and get some analysis from the guys who I know were listening, and we'll bring up what we heard in the previous hours and get some thoughts from the roundtable here in the final two segments of today's Armed American Radio's national broadcast. We'll be right back with the crew. Don't go away, please. Neil McCabe, let me go back to you. You heard what Ryan had to say. It's heartfelt, to say the least. But the irony I mentioned, the irony of the fact that the other side just doesn't seem to understand that if there's someone there, now they get it. And they get it because of Ryan, the man right here on the show with us, who was instrumental in producing the Guardian program that has now armed schools. And how many parklands, Ryan, real quick, have there been since then?
0.
Thank you very much. Neil, take it away.
No, 1,000%. And how many times have we heard about potential mass shootings at a mall or a church or a school or a restaurant where somebody is armed, and literally in 15 to 30 seconds that threat is neutralized, when on their best day the police are going to be there in 5 minutes. Right? The police arrive in time to put up the yellow tape and take statements, and that's and I don't know what the number is. Maybe John Lott is throwing around 2 million. How many violent crimes are prevented by people with arms? Right. That's the number. That's the statistic that the National Institutes of Health should be spending millions of dollars studying. And and then we're seeing. But what the other thing about this. Well, let me just say this about Florida, is that with the Parkland shooting, it was absolutely disgusting how the Democratic Party and their politicians would parade with the media through there just to exploit that tragedy for their own political agenda, like over and over and over again. It was horrible. But, you started off, talking about the Third Circuit. That Third Circuit victory is extremely significant.
Oh my gosh!
Because I actually worked with Emile Bouvet when I was at the Justice Department, and he was recently appointed to that appellate level court, the Third Circuit, by President Trump over the objections of the two Democratic senators from New Jersey.
Imagine that.
And so I want people to understand that it was extraordinary for President Trump to do that over the objections of the Democratic senators, because the Republican leadership, John Thune, the majority leader, and the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, they have given Democrats a veto over judicial appointments in their state. So if there are Democratic senators in that state, whoever's being made a judge is being approved by the Democrat. And it was absolutely extraordinary. Trump had to go over the objections of Thune and Grassley because they think senatorial privilege is more important than our democracy.
Yeah, they do.
And of course, Murkowski and Collins voted against Bouvet. And then the other thing that's significant about that decision, Mark, is that typically it's a 3-judge panel that's chosen randomly. So you have 15 judges on that court, and then you would randomly pick 3. They decided to go en banc, where all 15 judges
10
voted.
to 5. 10 to 5.
10 to 5. But one of the reasons they did that was because the liberals were afraid that you could potentially get 3 Republican judges. That's one of that court is absolutely stacked now. There are 9 Republican appointed judges on that appeals circuit.
Thank you, President
Trump. So they
Trump.
actually went to an extraordinary, having all 15 vote, because actually the decision was written by a Biden appointee, like you said, and that was it's like they're just screaming at the incoming tide. They're screaming at the incoming tide. So they voted all 15, and then they had the Biden appointee write the decision to try to sort of tamp back, to sort of tap the brakes of what is possibly coming next time around.
Oh, it's not possibly coming. It's coming. Your analysis there was spot on, by the way. Justin Moon, you are the CEO of Car Arms. And let's throw the rest. Go ahead and tell everybody, because your company's well diversified. Tell us about your other products that you also control, because it's not just Car Arms. Let us know real quick. There's a method to my madness, Justin.
Well, one of our major products is, of course, the Tommy gun, and we
I
also
love
make the
mine.
M1 carbine. But yeah, I mean, Tommy gun's been banned by name in Connecticut and a few other places in New York and in California, and so this is a big thing for us. If this third district ruling stands and the Supreme Court affirms it, then our market for Tommy guns will probably grow by up 30%. So
oh, yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you should be, and it will, because you have been robbed as a business owner because of the whims of politicians that have now been stifled. Were you surprised, Justin, to find out that was a Biden appointee? I'm going to give, because we're fair here. You know that. We have fun at the Democrats' expense because they make it so easy by handing you a smorgasbord of commie crap all the time. It's just content handed to us every single day. But we're fair here, and I got to hand it to her. What she did was handed down in that majority opinion, and she wrote, is no doubt the strongest Second Amendment appellate decision ever written. And I think that was affirmed when I was talking with Mark Smith and with Cam Edwards and Sheriff Kurt Hoffman. Would you agree with that? And does that surprise you?
I mean, it's it's surprising that the Biden appointee wrote such a good decision, but there are judges who are very much against our gun rights, but who follow the law and follow the guidelines which are established by the Supreme Court. And if you look at the history and the nature of our country and how those rights are established, you would really have to be a moron not to affirm the Second Amendment rights protecting commonly used firearms like semi-automatic rifles.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And what I loved, Ryan, was in that opinion, they took it upon themselves to expand. And this is something we've talked about for a long time. And I did mention this with Mark as well. You can go back to the Heller decision in 2008. Scalia stayed within those guardrails we talk about. We would have loved to have seen him get outside the guardrails. Now, again, in being fair, in the essence of fairness here, I understand why he didn't do that, because it wasn't really a part of the case. He could have easily done that, chose not to. And, well, the argument in hindsight, which is always high definition, we would have loved to have seen him do it because it would have eliminated a lot of litigation and a lot of expense down the road. But he didn't, so we are where we are. I believe this go around, Ryan, they are, just like the Third Circuit stepped out and included magazines, because both the Viramontes and the Higgins case, while they're different cases, that's why they're not combined, they are being heard separately in the same oral argument coming up in the fall. Nonetheless, there are similarities between those cases and what the Third Circuit just ruled on. Now, Ryan, I'm going to stop you there because we got that hard break. When we come back, I'm going to go back to you on that. And you know a little bit about this. I know you've dug deep into this Third Circuit decision, which is just absolutely, utterly historic. Guys, when we come back, we have one segment left in the roundtable. Hard-hitting radio today. I hope you've enjoyed it, whether you're listening or watching, all the way around. Please subscribe. It's that simple. If you're watching on YouTube and any other, just subscribe to us. It's real simple. We really appreciate that very much. Please visit all of our great partners, including Car Arms. You can find them all at armedamericanradio.com. The show is growing wildly. We've added new affiliates. The YouTube is blowing up, and we thank you for that and all of our partners who make it possible over the last 18 years and what's going to be the next 18 years, God willing. We'll be back with the crew right after the break for one more segment. Them and all of our great partners, including attorneysonretainer.us, attorneysonretainer.us. There's my card right there. I'm a member. If you carry a gun, you already know bad things can happen, and it happens in the, like that. And I Dream of Jeannie, blink of the eye. For those of you old enough to remember, Barbara Eden, blink, boom. That's what happens. This card represents, and Ryan's got one in his pocket as well, so does Jared Yanis and many, many other. This card represents my lawyer and my freedom, folks, and you should have it. You have till the end of the month to take advantage of the $50 off the 100, and it's only $37 a month for a team of up to 4 attorneys should you find yourself in a world of hurt. You're going to want your freedom, and for $37 a month, trust me, it's going to be a lot more than the $1,500 or plus an hour to keep you out of trouble. Just do it. Get off the fence and just get it done. It's attorneysonretainer.us/AAR. Ryan Petty, let's go back to you here in the Carr Firearms Group studios. I'm just going to turn it back over to you because we're running out of time, and you heard my question. Take it away.
Yeah, look, what happened this past week is being built on a foundation of rulings from the Supreme Court like Bruen and others. And it feels like, to me, again, as a layman, a non-lawyer, it feels like we're picking up steam here. Which is a great thing. But each of these decisions is critical because they add another layer of protection.
They're building blocks
against this, for the Second Amendment. And
legal Legos, baby.
It's great to see in our lifetime that this kind of restoration of this most important, along with our freedom of speech, this is one of the 2 most important freedoms that we have as Americans, and it's great to see in our lifetimes these things being restored. And I'm grateful for the political courage that President Trump has had. And quite frankly, I've said this before, and I hate saying this, Mark, but we almost kind of needed a Biden in the middle there.
No,
because
we did.
Trump too is absolutely firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, we would not have had this had we not had Biden. Guys, I know I hate to say that, but the country had to go through the Biden years because otherwise it would have just been theory and conjecture, okay? Now we know what the other side wants to do to us, hence why Trump was reelected. Now, Neil, this is right in your wheelhouse. Take that and add this to it. Let me phrase it that way. Politically speaking, are the justices who are going to hear the Viramontes case and the Higgins case in combined oral arguments, the 2 hardware ban cases, are they going to read this Third Circuit decision? I've phrased this as a roadmap. From a political standpoint, will a Kagan, a Sotomayor, and, well, Jackson is too stupid, but, let's assume she's not for the sake of this conversation. Will they read this Third Circuit decision and realize, look, this is laid out so well? We've already said in other decisions, the liberals have, that they respect the precedent in Bruen. Politically, talk to us about that. Will the Supreme Court be a little political here after this incredible decision by a Biden appointee?
Well, yeah, I think that what you're going to see is that Thomas and Alito are just going to keep their foot on the gas pedal because, we talk about, Supreme Court justices having lifetime appointments, but actually you're not supposed to die in office, especially if the party that appointed you is not in the White House. What you're expected to do is find the appropriate time to retire so that your party can put a younger person in that seat, right? And so, we were able to pick up, President Trump was able to pick up a seat because Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she just had nothing else to do. And so she just decided to die in the Supreme Court. And what you're going to see is Alito and Thomas are getting up there in years. Every spring, there are rumors that they are going to retire. But the fact that they didn't retire, I'm absolutely convinced, is that they are hanging on so that they can finish what was left undone by Heller and other decisions. Right. And so, the Kagan's pretty bright. Sotomayor and Brown, they're dumb as a post. But Kagan is smart enough so that she would actually join the majority opinion because that would give her influence on how that ruling is written. But the tide is definitely on the side of, and I don't want to say expanding gun rights. I want to say restoring gun rights to what they were, the way the founders and the framers understood them to be.
Which is why Bruin, Justin Moon, was so, in hindsight, so artfully written. And Justin, I want to point something out. When you were talking real quick, I got to go here real fast. The Tommy gun. I have a Tommy gun, and you know the story behind my Tommy gun because I got it from you guys. And, you know, how it was being pointed at me the whole time I was at the NRA convention, and I had to have one. I spoke to Frank and got one. I want to point out, that gun is on the ban list, ladies and gentlemen. It's a semi-automatic 45 caliber carbine. It's a pistol caliber. That's what it is, and it's banned. Maybe because the people think of it as the gangster gun. I don't know, but I had to throw that in defense of the Tommy gun, Justin. But with everything you've heard, I'll just let you throw your comments out. Have at it, brother. It's the round table.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to ban just a caliber semi-automatic rifle. But, you know, the Tommy gun is kind of both famous and infamous in the history. I mean, it was used by the gangsters in the Roaring '20s, and then the U.S. military used it in World War II and extensively, also in Vietnam, right up to Vietnam. So it was in a lot of wars, and it saved a lot of Americans.
It certainly did, and there's I go back to the story, ladies and gentlemen. I like to make it personal sometimes. I have a very, very close friend that lives up in the mountains not far from me here in North Georgia who fought in Vietnam, and I know that he carried a fully automatic Thompson. He had traded a lieutenant for that Thompson. That gun saved his life, and when I got that gun, I immediately took it up to him. He was the first person to fire a round through it. He cried when he saw it because that gun saved his life. And for those of you who might want to know what model I have, it's not the gangster version with the drum magazine. I have the TM1 version, and I want you to think Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan. That's the gun that I have, but I have the longer barrel version of it. Hey, guys, we're at the close of it. Here it is. Ryan Petty, Parkland Dad, I love you, man. Stick around, Ryan. I'm going to talk with you after the show. Justin Moon, CEO of Car Arms, fan favorite for a reason. New viewers and listeners, now you know why. And, of course, Neil McCabe. Incredible insight, as always, Neil. An OG for a reason. We'll be talking with you soon, possibly even next week to fill in for Brad. We'll check on you for your schedule next week. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the program as much as we enjoy bringing it to you every single day, 6 days a week. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Get involved. Help us continue to grow. We need you to do that. Armed American Radio's Daily Defense is going to get up and do it at 4 o'clock Eastern to 5 o'clock tomorrow, 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock Pacific, every single day because they don't want us to. Greg, how much time do I have?
20 seconds.
20 seconds. I'll take us to the break with this, guys. If you're new, you're going to love this. Carry on, carry often, carry absolutely everywhere. Never, ever, ever leave your cave without your club. No self-respecting caveman would have ever been caught outside his cave without his club. Enjoy your day. Stay safe. I love you. We'll see you on the radio tomorrow. Thanks for being here. As I want to point out, if you're watching, you don't get the incoming breaks and the music and the outros because that's copyrighted, and because we are live streaming, we get hit with copyrights, so that's why we don't do that, which means you don't get to hear some of the rejoiners because of the music beds underneath them. So what we're getting ready to do with the intro music is these guitars back here, I've already got the intro riffs already written and played out. We're going to be swapping those out. There's a little, and that's going to be fun because it will be my guitar. I never thought I'd be able to say that, so that's quite cool, and I'm very proud of that. However, there's a lot of work that goes into that because we've got to lay the loop down. We've got to put the drum track and the bass underneath it, which is always fun to do. It takes a little bit of time. And then we've got to have that booming voice of Peter Reef. Once we get that where we want it, Peter Reef's got to go back in and revoice everything because, well, he's just got to drop what he's already done over that music bed. So we're working on that. It's taking a little bit of time, but there's a reason for that. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed the program today. It was a dynamite show, dynamite show. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can pick up the podcast at armedamericanradio.com. You can check us out on every podcast platform. We're out there 20 years in, tens of millions of podcast downloads and listens over the 18 years. And we're looking forward to having you, if you're a new viewer or new listener, joining us every single day on the program. Never miss us here. We have a lot of fun. We're on air every day from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern, 1 to 2 Pacific. Every day, 6 days a week, Armed American Radio is on the airwaves because they don't want us to be here. That's why we do it. And from time to time, we can get salty on the internet. We're just not going to do it now. Still have some work today to do today to bring you the podcast. I'm going to have a sip of apple juice. Yeah, that's apple juice. I love you guys. See you on the radio tomorrow. Thanks for being here.